Oh, a bleak Monday in Colorado, Dougie, as we welcome you into the Colorado Prep Show presented by UPSWING. For those of us who are, high school sports fans, thank goodness we can plow ahead because we have Winter State Championships just on the horizon. Unfortunate loss for the Denver Broncos yesterday. Doug, you and I chatted a little bit afterwards. This is the editor-in-chief of Mile High Sports Magazine, Doug Ottewill, with me. I'm Dan Mohrmann, the editor-in-chief of Colorado Preps. Dougie, we chatted a little bit about that. How happy are you to be able to turn the page officially now on football, and let's just be full blown in on high school basketball, hockey, wrestling. Let's just do it all for the kids.
That's right. There's never a bad Monday in the high school sports world. Maybe for one school, but in a general sense, high school sports rolls on. There's always another positive story. There's always another champion. It's not like a Broncos Monday when you get bounced from the playoffs.
No,
everybody has something to be happy about in high school sports.
That's right. We're going to talk to a guy a little bit later who was real happy with what his team pulled off on Thursday night. Doherty boys basketball coach Mark Jones will join us after what is maybe the shot of the year. We've seen some pretty crazy buzzer beaters. I want to say that Broomfield had one over the weekend as well. I couldn't get my hands on any of that footage, but Doherty's was something that it was a one-of-a-kind kind of buzzer beater. I'm so anxious to talk to Mark. I was at the game in the first half, left at halftime, and then got an immediate barrage of, oh my gosh, did you see that text? Which, turns into me seeing the video, cropping the video, and then texting you, take a look at this. So that's going to be fun. But we're going to start.
We might need to rename the show Buzzer Beater Monday. I mean, it seems like almost every week we've got somebody else that's hitting an improbable game-winning buzzer beater shot. And it's great content. Just keep it going. I like it.
I mean, maybe we could get, Daktronics is going to make a lot of money off high school teams in the next few years as they install those shot clocks. Maybe we can get Daktronics to come in and sponsor Buzzer Beater Monday segment here on the Colorado Prep Show. But in honor of those who do sponsor us, we do want to begin our show with what's on the upswing. And I'm going to go first because, and I think it's funny that we both looked at some 5A basketball, Doug, but the one thing that caught my eye over the weekend, aside from a crazy buzzer beater, was Peach City is representing. We've been talking about Palisade boys basketball. Are they for real? Is this a little bit of a flash in the pan? It turns out the top end of that Southwestern Conference as a whole from the 5A standpoint might be real. The Bulldogs got a 78-68 win over Fruita Monument. I think that's a resounding endorsement of what they're going to be able to do this year. Get this. Only 5 of their players scored. I want to say it was the starting lineup. I was digging around, couldn't really get that confirmed, but 5 players in the scorebook for the Bulldogs. Carter Haywood pretty much went toe-to-toe with Fruita Monument's Jet Wells, who was, I think we'd all agree, one of the top players in the state.
We've talked about him more than once on this show.
That's right. Hayward scored 27 to Jets 32. Great rebound from a 5-point loss to Grand Junction, another league rival who's sitting in the top end of that 5A selection and seeding index. Palisade still has the number 1. We're going to see that as a theme with some of the basketball we talked today. They've suffered a loss to a team in their classification and still hold the number 1 spot, but they're looking good in 5A, and I think everyone around the state needs to keep an eye on that Southwestern League, especially those top-end teams, as we start getting into February, which becomes
hooping over there.
Yeah. So, and real quick, Dougie, before I toss it to you, as we try and do every week on the Colorado Prep Show, we try and rock some school gear just to show that we represent the kids and what they're doing. Big thanks to Diane Shuckgray at Douglas County. She was able to get some gear in my hand, so I'm representing the Huskies today. I see that Thomas Jefferson hat on your head. You were telling me a fun story offline, but where'd you come across that one?
Yeah, that was you got to go DPS here every once in a while, but yeah, this hat was actually a product of a photo shoot we did for Mile High Sports. We had Kyle Freeman on our high school, our annual preps issue, which is coming right up. Yeah.
Not Freeman. Freeland?
Yeah. Who said that?
I think you just said Kyle Freeman.
No, I know, but you're right. And the reason that I did, it's Mad Dog. Mad Dog is always calling him the wrong name, and therefore I've jumbled it. So I apologize. But yes, we were doing this shoot with Kyle Freeland, and the school was kind enough to bring down all their baseball uniforms, hats, We did a collaboration with the Rockies. So on the cover, which was a few years back, he's wearing a jersey that has half a TJ and then half a Colorado Rockies. But there were extra hats, and the powers that be were kind enough to give me one. So shout out Spartans.
All right. And what's on your upswing as we dive into another Monday of high school sports chatter?
Well, like you said, we're looking at 5A basketball, and this popped off the page to me because not only is Regis Groff boys basketball undefeated, but I always have to look at it and like the first time you read it, I always think Regis Jesuit that we've known for years and years and years. Regis Groff a little bit newer of a school, but the Fusion are the last remaining undefeated team in 5A boys basketball. And that's always impressive. There's still a long way to go in the season. But you consider the fact that this program was 1-22 just 3 seasons ago. That's a major turnaround. I don't even care who you're playing. If you're able to go from that kind of a deficit to being the only team left in 5A this year that hasn't lost, that deserves some props. I mean, this is the kind of turnaround that, there's got to be a sit down and an understanding and a commitment from administrators, coaches, parents, kids, everybody, that if you're going to be that bad to that good this fast, I think there's something special going on at that school. So that's impressive. And then you look at some of the personnel. James Murdoch averaging 23 points a game. It's a kid to keep an eye on, especially as we get down near closer to the Coliseum. So yeah, congratulations to Regis Groff, the Fusion, my upswing team of the week.
And we won't have Jermaine Stafford with us today. He's still on assignment. He was out last week, as were you. Big thanks to Marcus Hill from the Colorado Springs Gazette for stepping in. But, we'd be remiss. Jermaine has been preaching and preaching and preaching for weeks that Colorado needs an indoor track season, Doug. And if there was ever a weekend where you should be running indoors, it was definitely this weekend because it was cold. I did not adhere to an indoor policy and got a little bit uncomfortable at times. But as Jermaine says, Upswing, which is located at 7460 South University Boulevard in Centennial, has a fantastic indoor track. Every lane of that track is built for young athletes to push their limits and chase their goals. What are their goals? As we get into the winter, those goals are going to be state basketball championships, maybe state hockey championships, wrestling, you name it. For the girls, it could be swimming. There might even be some random skiers that come down, but this is what Upswing is about, helping kids reach their goals and doing it by removing cost barriers. They invest in the drive and talent of young athletes, creating opportunities for them to excel in and out of the gym. Upswing scholarships are always available. You can visit their website at upswingfoundation.org to learn more. But once you're done with the training, once you're done with getting yourself in tip-top shape for those state championships, make sure that you hit that recovery center. The recovery at Upswing helps young athletes prevent injuries, bounce back faster, and keep progressing toward their dreams. We'd normally bring in Jermaine right about now, but I think we're just going to dive into basketball because we had some big games over the week.
We can't bring in Jermaine.
Well, we can't bring in Jermaine. Jermaine is preoccupied today, but he did text me. He plans on being back next week, so excited to see him then. But let's take a look at this last weekend, Doug. And I texted you today because this is a game that, man, if there was a game that I was going to make the trip for to go up I-25, it might have been one like this. Rock Canyon Chaparral boys basketball. It was Chap getting the 54-50 win over their district rival. But this is a game that we might be able to see a rematch of this. And if we see a rematch of this, it's going to be in a building like the Denver Coliseum. I asked you to kind of take a look at this. What was your big takeaway from Chaparral coming away from this heavyweight fight as the winner?
Yeah, I mean, it's no secret that I'm a huge fan of big classification basketball, 5A, 6A boys basketball. In Colorado, it's gotten so much better. These particular kind of showdowns, I mean, they really feature the best of the best in our state. As much as I, really enjoy the small town football and 6-man and 8-man football, when it comes to basketball, there's nothing better than a big time rivalry game in the 6A classification. And this one just didn't disappoint. Shap is one of the most well-rounded teams in the state. And they're they're ranked number 1 for a reason. But you look at their scoring; they won the game 54-50 over Rock Canyon. You look at their scoring, and they had 4 kids in significant double digit scoring. Christian Williams 19 points, Luke Williams 13 points, Champ Spears, Luke Howery both with 11. They're getting a very balanced attack on offense, but I think more importantly, this team can play really, really good defense. They're athletic. They get after people on the perimeter. They held Rock Canyon to 5 points in the second quarter. But the funny thing is that Rock Canyon held them to 6. So Rock Canyon is another one of these teams. They're not ranked number 1, but they're not far off. I mean, they're a top 10 kind of team always, and are again this year. Rock Canyon plays great defense. Very, very similar team. Obviously, with a score like that in a rivalry type game, the comparisons are very close. They stormed back, and in a game that Shaq probably thought they had won at a certain point, had to really go out and win it because Rock Canyon came back behind Kai Valentine's 23 points. Cooper Elwood pitched in 16 points. Cooper had a brother that played for the program a couple years ago. Both phenomenal players. Cooper, by the way, is the son of one of the best sports photographers in the country, Garrett Elwood. You've probably seen his Nuggets pictures everywhere, but obviously they got a basketball pedigree right there. And so when you talk about these teams that are on collision course, definitely will be, heading or should be expected to be at the Coliseum. And you hope you get to see a rematch like this because those just get even better when teams know each other, when they've played each other, especially in a close one like this where it could have gone either way. I really do hope we get to see both of these teams square off at the Coliseum.
Well, and I think telling one of the big tells about this game is that Chaparral was able. I mean, the fact that Jacob David wasn't the leading scorer for Rock Canyon tells you exactly where their focus was. I mean, he's the Jags' leading scorer on the year, over 18 points a game. And I think their attitude was if someone's going to beat us, it's going to have to be someone other than him. So when you take him out of the game, I mean, 54-50, that's a coin flip game, right? There's probably 2 or 3 plays
at the end. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. So Rock Canyon's every bit up there. And I think I can't remember if we had a little bit of this discussion on air a couple weeks ago, and after we talked to Jairus Crabshaw up at Eagle Crest, where he said winning a state title kind of got the weight off his shoulders of the pressure of being one of those coaches. And there's a really good tier of coaches. Brian Wood at Mountain Vista is one in my head, but you look at a guy like Kent Grams at Rock Canyon and then Nate Ronert at Shap. Like, are those guys that you would kind of put in that tier of, if you can get that pressure off of them, if they can just break through and win that first title, can that just start something and start almost like a tidal wave of either championship game appearances or even championships for programs like those?
Well, I think so. I mean, Chaparral's they've won one in the past. I don't even remember Josh Adams, the great tip-in dunk up at the CU Event Center. So the program itself has one, but yeah, Nate Ronner wants one of his own. And so I think that does sort of fall into that same category. Rock Canyon still looking for theirs in terms of their program's history. So yeah, I mean, there's some drama there. There's some, getting over the hump kind of stuff that's taking place all the time. You asked about, can this springboard a dynasty? Well, I don't know, man. You look at these schools, especially down kind of in the South Metro area, and even extended a little east to Aurora. I mean, every year there's 4 or 5 teams that have a really legitimate shot. And it's, it's the Rock Canyons, it's Chaparral, it's Highlands Ranch, it's Thunder Ridge, it's Eagle Crest. It's, the list goes on of these teams that really can stake claim to a title run. And I think, building a dynasty, that's tough to do because there's really, really good players along that entire corridor down there. And, some years one school gets them and some years another school gets them. And I don't expect to see anybody going on, let's say a Denver East kind of run where, say, in the early 2000s, they won, I'm picking a number, but maybe 7 out of 10 or something. They just would go through the state and they were always expected to be in the state finals. I don't know if you'll see that out of this new kind of crop of schools that have great basketball tradition. I think they all are capable of winning every year. Are any of them winning 3 in a row? That's a tall ask. I don't care what your program is or who your coach is. I mean, there's some really, really good competition down there.
Yeah, and if you look at the top end, like even just the top 10 of the selection and seeding index, I mean, you're basically seeing you have a couple of city teams, right? City league teams in Rangeview.
And Rangeview, which is really Aurora.
Yeah, but they're in that 6A city league with all those DPS schools. So them and George are both in the top 10, right? It's always nice. I think it's great to see George Washington there. But then you get like just this massive swing from the west side of town, kind of down through that South Metro corridor that you said, because you have Ralston Valley and Arvada West. I don't think Columbine, I think, is in the top 15 of that. Then you have your Continental Leagues. You have your Rock Canyon, your Mountain Vista, your Chaparral, and kick it over to the Centennial League. Cherokee Trail, Eagle Crest is right there. Grandview's right there. Cherry Creek's in the top 15. I mean, you just have like, it's just kind of all centered. There's the 2 teams right there in the city, and then it's just all in that South Metro area. And that's been so much fun to watch over the last few years. I mean, Thunder Ridge, I think, won back-to-back titles right around that COVID time. So it might've been 19 and 20 or somewhere in there. Rangeview had a couple of back-to-back titles, and they're very much in the mix again this year. And then you have those tier of coaches that we've talked about. I mean, Reggie Hammond at George. Cameron, I don't know if Reggie has one on his resume. I didn't get a chance to look before the show, but if he doesn't, he's another one of those guys that's just in that tier of great basketball coaches where one championship win really kind of changes that entire legacy of what he means to his program.
Yeah, and you know, you talk about some of those programs, and I was looking just today when we were considering some of the things we talk about on the show, and you look in the Jeffco League. You know, you mentioned Columbine just being outside of the top 15, but you have 2 undefeated teams in A West, in Ralston Valley, and you look at that and you're like, that was our football semifinals. I mean, these are football powerhouses, all 3 of those: Columbine, A West, and Ralston Valley, and yet here they are in big school basketball, and they're turning heads, because I don't think at the beginning of the season anyone saw 2 undefeated teams coming out of Jeffco.
Unless it was Valor, right? Like Valor would have been, if you were going to give me a list of Jeffco League teams, and when we cite Valor because they play in the Jeffco League, but that would have been my guess, is a team like Valor Christian would have been the undefeated team at this point in the year.
Yeah, and kudos to both of those programs in Ralston Valley and Arvada. And the other thing is, they've played dudes. They're not just playing a soft schedule. I mean, they've had big wins over big teams. You know, I think George Washington is a team that's fallen to them. Valor Christian, as you mentioned, that's not a pushover team. I mean, those kind of games and opponents are on both of their schedules and will be throughout the remainder of the conference play. So, you know, those numbers aren't hollow by any means.
No, and we have a conversation that we're going to touch on later. Legislative Council's a week away. There's one agenda item that I think would make for a fun conversation here. But, I mean, for the life of me, I've been kind of pounding this hammer for as long as anyone will listen. But I think the best way to end a regular season, and the Centennial League already does it, but if you can get a league tournament in there, if you can get a Jeffco League tournament, Continental League tournament, that would make almost so just for a great weekend of going up and hanging out in that South Metro area and just hitting 3 or 4 gyms to watch probably the best basketball you'll see across the state. So,
well, when I was a junior and senior in high school and I played at North Glen, the Front Range League did have an end of the season tournament. And, you know, just from a competitive standpoint, you play each one of those teams twice in the regular season. And then, you know, if you're one of the better teams, one of the upper half teams, you're bound to see them a third time. And it was fun. It was a lot of drama. And that was coming from a player's standpoint, you know, just being able to face the top teams in your conference again. I think gets everybody a little bit more, battle tested when it comes to, the grade 8 and trips to the Coliseum and regionals and things like that in the smaller classes. I like the idea of conference tournaments at the high school level. Don't talk to me about it in college basketball or football, but whatever.
Before we move on, the only thing I can really tell you is even going back, 8-10 years ago when I really started diving into the preps world, the Tri-Peaks District Tournament, which for a long time was held at Pueblo Central High School, always made for a great atmosphere. And I just remember, my buddy Brian's dad, Ken, was the head coach at Manitou for a long time. Him getting his team to a district championship game to face either St. Mary's or CSCS at the time brought out all the alums that would make the drive to Pueblo because it's a rivalry game. It's a district championship game. And it just meant so much more than going to any of those schools on a random Tuesday during the regular season for a regular game. So I'm all about the environment it would create, the atmosphere, maybe the implications if you made it so that the winner of the league tournaments would get their ticket punched in. But we're going to shift to girls basketball here in a second, but just a couple of quick boys basketball notes. Big showdown this week. 2A number 1 Byers heads to number 2 Simla later this week. So it's far enough away from me, Doug, that it would be an inconvenient drive, but it's close enough that it would almost be worth it to see how that game would shake out. Those are two teams that I'm very curious to see. I think it would be a fantastic atmosphere, like we're talking about.
What's another 25 miles on your vehicle? You have thousands.
At this point, it's nothing. I mean,
yeah,
I'm halfway to Lyman at that point. I might as well just go swing by and say hi to our friend Mike O'Dwyer. But Timnath, Montezuma Cortez, and Denver West, all still unbeaten teams in 4A. You talked about Regis Grove, but I mean, there's some unbeaten teams in 4A that are still looking to do some big things. So those are going to be fun to keep an eye on. And we have one scorer still in the state, Kennedy's Elias Brooks, who's over that 40-point per game mark. He's at 41 points per game still, and we're in January 26th. So the end of the regular season is not too far off. And this guy is just continuing to put up blistering numbers, Doug. Yeah,
I mean, hey, if you're doing that at this point in the season, you're a guy that we want to be catching up with, into the state semis and the state finals. I mean, there's nothing better than to watch a true scoring superstar deep into the tournament.
Yep. Switching gears, we had another massive game that, in hindsight, I don't know if they were ranked this at the start or when the game was played, but Cherokee Trail and Arapahoe are right now number 1 and number 2 in the selection and seeding index from CHSAA. They played over the weekend, and it was Arapahoe getting the win. Haley Kenyon played well. She led her team with 14 points, but it was what she did on the defensive side of the ball. You can see her steal right there, create some points. She gets another one that she does those little things on defense that turns into offense for her squad. And it resulted in a win over a CT team that a lot of people think can make a run for a state championship, and so for Arapahoe to come away with that win, I thought was really impressive. The one thing that just it makes me smile a little bit this time of year, Cherokee Trail sitting at number 1 in that selection and seeding index, Arapahoe sitting at number 2, despite Arapahoe getting that win, is that you're going to host either way. If you're 1 or 2, you're going to host all the way to the Denver Coliseum. But is that something, and there's still time left in the regular season, we should point that out. But is that something that when you look at from a selection and seeding index point of view, like we got to figure out some kind of human element to correct that kind of oversight?
Well, I can always, as just a general rule of thumb, if you're using an index, it's going to be imperfect. And some people might argue it's the most perfect way you could possibly do it, because if you go with a rankings, a selection committee, if you will, there's a human element to it. Humans are never perfect either. So I can tell you this. My father, after he retired from the CHSAA, let's say 5-10 years after his retirement, he served on the 5A selection committee for state boys basketball. And there was, I want to say 7, 8, maybe 10 guys that they were tasked with go watch as many high school basketball games as you can, And at the end of the season, we being the CHSAA, we need a composite ranking, in your opinion, of where these teams should be seated. And they would go to, I mean, I could remember looking at the spreadsheets, 60 games in a season, 70 games in a season, and they had notes on everybody and comparables to everybody. And when the brackets came out, it was pretty much chalk. They were very close to right. And the challenge with that, and this is where I have some empathy for anybody trying to come up with the perfect system, is that takes a lot of man hours. I mean, just that one committee that I remember, and I would sit there and go to games with them. There was 8-10 guys, like I said. They all spent, at least 2 nights a week trying to get to high school basketball games, if not 5. That's a big ask. And that's, the only way you can get that kind of service is from some guys that have a really vested interest in the sport and the organization, or you have to pay people. And that's always prohibitive when it comes to high school sports. So I think it's always fun for debate. It's fun for these shows. It's fun for us to see which coaches don't care about their matchups and which ones do. So yeah, a 1 and 2, when 2 just beat 1 it's always one of those things of like, that makes no sense. You play the game on the court, not in a computer system or formula. Mm-hmm. So yeah, we're going to talk about it on shows like this, but perfection on that front is impossible. You need the NFL's 17 game schedule to kind of work out your seedings and then reseedings based on who wins and loses in the playoffs. So it's never perfect. You go win the game on the court, I guess, is the only way anyone can really control it.
Yeah. Plenty of that going on around the state. Meeker handed Roaring Fork its first loss of the season, getting the better of the Rams 47-40. Freshman Sienna Rogers led Meeker with 18 points. Impressive outing for the underclassmen. Small school ranks later tomorrow night, actually. 2A number 1 Marino will put its undefeated record on the line against 3A number 2 Yuma. I haven't looked to see where I forgot to see where that game was definitively, Doug, but that's one I would love to go watch in the Pit. The Pit's another venue that I just, as a high school sports media guy, I feel like it should be an obligation for us to get to it once every couple of years. Hockey regular season ends just over 2 weeks away. Hat trick from Rex Burstein gave Colorado Academy a win over Pine Creek. It's the Eagles' first loss of the season. Just something of note as we get closer to the playoffs. I walked down to Ed Robson Arena on Saturday to check out Cheyenne Mountain Valor Christian. George Gwozdecki has his team playing some pretty good hockey. Cheyenne Mountain was up 1-0, but Valor bounced back with 5 straight goals to get a 5-1 win over the Red-Tailed Hawks. That first period Cheyenne Mountain team is a team that can definitely make some noise in the state playoffs. So that'll be interesting to see if they can kind of continue that momentum. Young team for Eric Austin over there at Cheyenne Mountain. But we're going to get back into more hoops a little bit later. On the other side of this break, we're going to talk about the buzzer beater of buzzer beaters as we chat about what happened at Doherty High School the other night with Doherty boys basketball coach Mark Jones right after this.
Whoever said work smarter, not harder, didn't realize you could do both.
This is Tim Anderson of Gordon Insurance, and we are proud to support all of our area athletes. With offices in Lyman, Callahan, Flagler, Sterling, and Kit Carson, we offer all types of insurance, including home, auto, commercial, farm, crop, life, bonds, and workman's compensation. We are independent and thus can offer you multiple choices of companies, not just one. Call or visit the office near you, and one of our agents can take care of you. See all of our contact information by going to www.gordonins.com or call me at 719-740-1361.
Oh, these KDs are fire.
KD, you work here?
Whatever, kid. Take notes. Every shoe for every athlete, only at Dick's.
Welcome on back to the Colorado Prep Show presented by UPSWING. Dan Mohrmann, Doug Ottewill, and the third guy you see on screen is Doherty boys basketball coach Mark Jones. Mark, thanks, man. I know you've got some prep to do heading down to Trojan Arena tonight, so thanks for joining us.
No, I appreciate it, guys. I appreciate you having me on. Kind of talk about last week.
Well, it was something to talk about. I saw you before the game. I hung out for the first half. Admittedly, I went home at halftime. Was impressed with the way that you guys were playing. I know it was a rough start to the season, tough strength of schedule for your Spartans. And then I got a barrage of text messages. Did you see the end of the Doherty game? And I had to go back and look. I want you to walk me through, just everything that was going through your emotions, because as we're about to see here, Sean Smith with just the craziest of shots that neither one of you guys saw go in. How long did it take to register everything that had happened in that 2-second moment?
I think I'm still trying to register everything that's going on, from that moment. As you could tell, like at the bottom of the screen, like we're trying to just hopefully get a shooting foul. And when it finally clicked for us that I guess the ball went in, is that my assistant coach was pointing at the rim at the bottom and out the corner of my eye. I seen him saying that it was good, and then the crowd just stormed the court. It was insane. It was an unreal moment for that ball. Someone just throw it up. Someone as in Sean Smith, one of our senior leaders, threw it up at the rim, hoping just to make a play, and then he gets an and 1-3 in one of the best moments.
You mean you guys don't practice shooting corner half court threes while getting fouled like every day in practice? This is
twice a week we try to work on those. Just happened the day before is the one we actually worked on that one. That's the same exact spot.
Perfect. That's awesome. One of the fun things about modern high school sports is that you do have social media, and you're on the bench and you don't see it, and everybody in the whole world is watching it going, wow, what a moment. How long did it take you to see the video?
I think, right after my wife gave me a call, and she was like, did that just really happen? Just going excited. And then I checked my phone, and after we got done talking with coaches and everything, and I've seen we were just tagged in so many videos. One of our camera guys, Hayden, does a phenomenal job, and he was on the one on the baseline that caught that great look for us. And then, once it set in for me, I think it finally set in at the end of the night that shot actually went through, and it actually, fell for our way. So it took a while for it still to register for me.
And you see there at the end, the officials kind of came together. Ken Vecchio, longtime head coach of Manitou Springs, who's now on your staff at Doherty, he was kind of the one that went over and tried to, I think, get a definitive answer. You're sitting there just screaming for the shooting foul. But did you get word of what the discussion was with those guys? I've seen a lot of people reply to stuff that we put out that, there should have been one shot, there should have been time left on the clock. But what was the definitive explanation you guys ended up getting from the officials?
That there was no time on the clock, and it was a shooting foul, and so it expired, and that was the game. That was it. And then they ran off the court.
Free throw was unnecessary at that point.
Free throw was unnecessary. There was no reason to shoot the free throw. So yeah, there was a lot of comments on there about what it was or what everybody thought. It was interesting to see everybody's definitely their thoughts from their angles.
And I mentioned that tough schedule that you guys put together, tough start to the year, but what does a win like this, especially in that kind of a fashion, do for the morale in that locker room of yours?
It helps. We've been on so many close games. Rock Canyon, we up 12. Cherry Creek, we battled them to the end, ended up losing by 6. Legend, we were up 14 at one point. And so many of those tough games, that we were in just battling. And so it's nice to see, this type of game fall our way. And it gives us that confidence, hats off to Rampart. They're one of the top teams in the state in 5A and could easily compete at the 6A level as well. Right. So to do it against a good team in that type of fashion, I feel like that can always help, turn your season around a little bit to get it going.
Coach, making a shot like that is always a tough ask, especially if you've got somebody draped on your arms. But take us back a few seconds into the timeout, and what kind of coaching moment was that? Obviously, everything worked out in your favor, but what was the conversation on the bench prior to the play?
Prior to that play, we called the timeout. The kid hit the free throw, so we were obviously down one. We talk about emotions. We talk about being able to control what we control in that moment, right? And being in the moment. And, a lot of my senior leaders during that time, haven't been in that moment yet. And so it was nice to see them be able to endure that full moment right there. So we were able to get set up. Gavin was able to get a clean look. He didn't shoot the ball right away. And if you see in the video, we thought we were going to get the ball a little bit closer to where we are to our bench. They ended up putting it on the other half. So the patience, the poise that Gavin, Kai, Saran, Dorian, all those guys are on the court, right? During that time to get set up and knowing that we had to get at least something going toward our rim and to get a shot off no matter what, it was, cool to see. Win or lose that game, to be in those type of games, to be able to win games, you have to be able to win situational basketball. And that's something we do try to prepare on, a couple times a week to get in those moments, 0.5 seconds, right? Less than a second, less than 3 seconds. And so there is preparation up to that piece, but sometimes the luck just falls your way and the ball just happens to fall in and, you get the right call. So, the conversation was calm. There was no panic in none of my guys. They just wanted to be able to make the play.
Well, and this is only the second year of fouls resetting at the quarter. So we're seeing basketball evolve at the high school level, but for all we know, Rampart could have had 8 fouls in the third, which would have given you guys, a bonus opportunity. But instead they had, I think, 0 fouls going into that sequence. They fouled you the first one, and they were just going to try and hack you and let that time run off. So how do you like the adjustment of this method as a coach? I mean, obviously, if it hadn't gone your way, maybe you'd feel different. But do you like how this is played out with resetting fouls at the end of each quarter?
I think it's huge. Someone like myself who have in the past have had aggressive teams and has known to get up pressure a lot, and the foul count could sometimes get up there. And then next thing you know, we're going into the second quarter, right? Already in the 1-1, could be going into the double bonus and they're shooting free throws a whole second quarter. I think it's huge that the game's able to reset. And it's a different style of play, different style of coaching as well. But I love it. I think it's great for the game, for the high school game basketball, especially Colorado.
Coach, I asked this question when we have coaches on the show, but as we get down, and there's still some time left in the season, but as we get down, we start looking at playoff brackets and who might be seated where, and teams to watch as we get towards state. Dan and I can't be everywhere. A guy like you, though, you see all these teams, all these players, whether it was, this season or summer camps or even going back to last season. So to help our audience kind of get ready for the final push of the season, who's a player on your team that everybody should be watching as we get down to the end of the season? And then who's a team and a player outside of your team that's worth keeping an eye on as we push toward the Coliseum?
It's great. My team is very unique. Everybody does something good on my team. And so it's always hard to point out one player on my team. And, it just shows, we're pretty deep 1 through 9, but someone who's been really playing well, stepping up this year has been Gavin Gilbert. Last game, Sean hits the shot, but Gavin was the horse, that did a lot of the work for us, rebounding, getting steals. He got a huge steal in the last, I think we were down 4-2. He had a huge steal at the end to make us go tied up, or one of the two. The game before, I think he had 17 points against Pueblo West, and he's playing really well right now. He's grown up a lot since June, and to see his growth, not just on the basketball court, off the basketball court, his emotions are all coming in check. So it's awesome to see. I think Gavin Gilbert's going to be definitely the one that's going to be the one to watch out for us as we keep going. A team that's always exciting to watch, that I think right now, I think it's going to be, Cherokee Trail. Brandon Brown does a good job up there. They just had a tough loss against Grandview, 1-point loss, but He's been building some things for the last 3 or 4 years while he's been up in that spot. And they have a guard. I think his name is Jordan up there. And the he's a good football player, just a pure good athlete. He makes that team go. I think Cherokee Trail will be one of the teams to watch out, as we get deeper and deeper into playoffs.
Well, I mean, that's a tomorrow problem for you. Tonight, the problem is Fountain Fort Carson down at Trojan Arena. So
Absolutely.
We're going to let you go get your team ready. But Mark, thanks so much for jumping on and chatting with us about probably the most exciting finish to a basketball game we'll see all year.
Absolutely. I got to give one shout out. You guys talked about my guys over at Regis Groff. I coached AAU, grew up watching Jamaico. We all played AAU together. And he's done a real good job with that team and, building that community back up. So them being 14-0, going from last year when they weren't doing so well, it's a huge testament to their coaching, him, Tyrell, Donnell Wells down there. So be on the watch for Regis Groff this year as well for that 5A level.
Outstanding. Good stuff from Doherty boys basketball coach Mark Jones.
Thanks, guys.
Good luck,
Spartans
coach.
are back in action tonight. And it was quite the ending to win over Rampart that they needed it, and I don't think
you get good guests. You get good guests. I don't know.
Right.
I don't know who's producing your show for you or who's doing the dirty work, but man, the guys you get on, kudos to you, Dan.
We're gonna give all the credit to Danny Bailey. He's technically the producer, so it's just gonna be all him. I mean, no one knows high school athletics more than Danny Bailey. So,
more of them, less than us. Never a bad thing.
Always a good thing. Dougie, you mentioned basketball playoffs. There is something going down next week that could greatly affect basketball playoffs, and not just basketball, but several other sports. We're gonna get into all that right after this.
When I go to court, these aren't my clients. These are my friends. These are people that I believe in, and they have one shot, just one shot for justice. If they've come to me, and we've gotten to trial, their life has been turned upside down in some awful way, and I am their only hope. I need to be their champion, to quote Prince Oberyn from Game of Thrones. They need someone in this trial by combat that can fight for them. I'm all they have. So if I haven't put the time in, if I haven't trained, if I haven't humbly looked in the mirror and thought about ways I can be better, and I don't present my best self in court, then I failed them. And that's what motivates me as a trial lawyer, because when this is over, that client goes home. And if I haven't done my best for him, I haven't been his champion, then I've failed.
The Benefits Broker team of agents has over 100 years in employee benefits and individual health care needs and is your 24/7 resource for a variety of essential benefits-related information. Clients have enjoyed the ability to connect in person or by phone, while others enjoy the convenience of their online service where they can review the status of their claims, obtain summaries, and download forms including claim forms. Dave and Steve do their homework so you don't have to. They know the market by distinguishing the best products from the merely adequate. Give them a call at 877-545-4840 or visit them online at benefitsbroker.com.
There are those who say the modern world has made us lose touch with places like this. We say, that depends on what you're driving.
Welcome back into the Colorado Prep Show presented by UPSWING. Dan Mohrmann and Doug Ottewill. Thanks to Doherty boys basketball coach Mark Jones for his time talking about the crazy buzzer beater win over Rampart last week. But now we're going to turn our attention to next week. Doug, the CHSAA Legislative Council has its first of two meetings a week from tomorrow. I'll be up there kind of giving updates over everything that comes out of it. It's genuinely one of the it's how policy across the state in terms of bylaws, constitutional amendments, all that stuff is added. So I'll be up there tracking everything as it's presented. One of the items that I wanted to talk about, because I think it's a good topic for this show, kind of pertains to postseason field sizes. It's a proposal from the Western Slope League called ADM 9. It's calling for a cap of no more than 50% of the total number of schools in each classification in terms of playoff postseason field size. I guess a simple explanation is if you're Basketball classification has 56 teams. Your playoff field size can't be more than 28. It's looking to reduce it just to get rid of some of those early playing games where those lower seeded teams are just gonna are more often than not going to go and get blown out by a higher seeded team. I think my favorite line from it is right there at the end of the rationale, where it's generally a waste of resources and time. And I think that's a very blunt assessment of some of those early postseason games. I've been kind of pushing for something like this for a while. I think there should be a cap of 24 teams for all state tournament field sizes, especially in terms of sports like basketball and football. And sometimes in football, I think that's even a stretch. But when you hear this, Doug, as a guy who's been around high school athletics for a long time, what's your initial thought just on capping the number of teams that can make a postseason at 50% of the total number of schools in that classification?
I think it's generally a pretty good idea. When you have more than that, it lengthens the time it takes to actually crown a champion, and it potentially shortens the duration that you can actually execute a regular season, at least in theory. I think, the idea, and I'm just guessing here, but I'm sure that especially like in a sport like basketball, some of the idea is, well, the NCAA has a 64 team. Now it's 68 bracket, and it's great. It's the greatest event in all of sports. And there's upsets left and there's upsets right. And there's Cinderella stories every year and so on and so forth. I think that's accurate in college basketball. I don't think that's the case, or rarely the case in high school basketball. By the time you get to this point in the season, in state high school basketball, I think your better half teams have emerged. And even then, the teams that are on the bottom of that better half generally get beaten in the early rounds. There's not a lot of, what I would consider Cinderella stories. I think at most you might have a 5 or a 6 something that winds up being in a state championship. It's very rare that a team that's not, quote unquote, a top 10 team makes it all the way. These teams play each other. There's a lot of relativity. Whereas in college basketball, for example, you've got a mid-major that's never played anybody, and you really don't know how they'll stack up against somebody. They might be great all season against their own conference or their own competition. So you don't know how they're going to play against a North Carolina or a Duke or a Kansas or whatever. So there's some fun in that. I think when it comes to high school basketball in Colorado, your 5A teams have played each other. Your 4A teams have played each other. Like, you have a pretty good sense as to where teams stack up. So I think the seeding is probably a little bit less of a guessing game than it is in college basketball. And then, you talk about sports like football and basketball. Football, I think anytime you can have less games, you're better off because there's less injuries. It sometimes becomes a battle of attrition, which you don't want it to be, but that's just what happens. Something like soccer or lacrosse, again, I think your cream of the crop teams, they surface by the end. There's no need for, your very best team in the state to play the very worst, or the winner of the worst and worstest. It's predetermined. It's going to happen. So I think it's to the point of the letter that you referenced, there's a lot of wasting of time and resources in some of those deep tournament early round games.
Right. And I mean, girls example is actually a great example, because in 4A girls lacrosse, you have 29 teams that play in that total field, and it's a 24 team playoff bracket. And I don't like it from the standpoint of growing up, and this sounds a little get off my lawn-ish, but making the postseason was always something that had to be earned, and
I like
playoff,
that.
And as we continue to kind of pound the mission of high school athletics, the idea of working towards something that you have to accomplish, I still think reigns as one of those true core values of what we're supposed to be doing. So I remember talking to to an athletic director a couple years ago when they stretched out the 5A and 6A basketball fields from I think it was 32 to 40, and I thought that was a little ridiculous. And I think what I said to this AD was shrink it to 24 and add 2 or 3 games onto the regular season if you're worried about kids missing out on opportunities to play. Just add them on the back end of the regular season, and then stop wasting time with those early games. And this AD looked at me and said, "Oh, the Denver area schools will never vote for that." And that struck me as just kind of, and I don't know how much that's actually accurate in terms of what would be done, but I think it just kind of, if that's the case, it kind of gets away from that theory of trying to instill what high school athletics should be all about. And I believe that one of those core values should be earn your way in, work hard. And I mean, there's a much deeper conversation there about success in athletics. And Chris Roberts at Cheyenne Mountain is always an advocate of, hey, success is more often than not tied into resources when it comes to high school athletics in terms of club participation, the resources to play, whether it's basketball, volleyball, golf, and that's why there's always kind of this shift with the public schools and private schools in that regard. Those with resources have a better opportunity to succeed. But for those teams that might be in that mid-range, so in your 12, let's call it 8 to 20 seed, like, let those teams earn their way in, and let that be kind of like the celebration of what they were able to do. If your classification has more than 48 teams, right? The top half get in, earn your way in. Whatever happens after that should just be frosting on the cake. It shouldn't be frosting on the cake, but let that just kind of play out as playing with house money, maybe is the better way to say it.
Well, if I'm playing devil's advocate, and just for the sake of playing devil's advocate, I will. I think the one component of this that maybe we might not be considering is that the more opportunity for the more number of kids, or more, bigger number of schools, the more opportunity you have to do what you just said. There's more kids trying to earn their way into a tournament. If it's deeper, you're extending the prospect of being able to play in state a few more weeks for a few more programs. I'm not necessarily saying that's good or bad, but if I am playing devil's advocate, and that when Legislative Council meets next week, there will be some of this, that is a component. There's probably a magic number for every sport. I look at, if I'm looking at a relative example, I don't think there's anybody who cares about Major League Baseball that has ever once said, yeah, it was better when it was just, you win your division and you're in. I mean, you go back to the days of the Yankees and the Dodgers squaring off all the time. It was, if you didn't win the pennant, you were done. And I think there is something to be said for having more teams, more kids interested in the waning moments of a season because they have a shot. Now, are they going to advance all the way to the Coliseum or all the way to Canvas Stadium in football? And probably not. But we're all delusional when it comes to sports. We all think we can make a Cinderella run, whether it's your favorite pro team or the high school team that you were on. I was on one of those teams when I was a senior. We were not a good team, and that was when the state, I want to say it was every team in the state made it. We got bounced in the first round, but we got to have fun for one more week. I get the resources. I get the time. I get the potential for injury. I'm more in the camp of what you're saying. You need to earn it at least a little bit. But I would say that there will be some of that opposition of people saying, hey, you know what? I know my team or my kid isn't going to go all the way, but I'd love it if they had a chance to win one game just to make it. And so I can see that side of the argument as well. So how's this? Because this is another piece of this
of this proposal that I've been thinking about. What if and this works from a basketball standpoint. So this is mainly basketball centered. It's the time of the year that we're in. So this is what it is. But what if you reduced your state tournament field to 12, but everyone qualified for regionals, right? And you get 12 regionals, kind of like volleyball does it. And if you win your regional tournament, you're going to state.
And if I'm not mistaken, this happens in the smaller classifications already. Am I correct?
They're getting further and further away from that.
Okay.
But if you had something like that, right? Like where it's kind of and I'd have to do the numbers off the top of my head, and I'm bad at math, admittedly. But let's just say you had 12 regions and you filled them evenly, and your regional champion goes to state. Your top 4 seeds get a bye, and you're starting state at the quarterfinals. One, it kind of cleans up the state tournament a little bit, just in terms of, and you and I we talked last week battling through the state tournament schedule for something else that we're working on. But, there's so much of like, this round's got to be completed by this day, and this round's got to be completed by this day. This kind of makes it a little bit more of, you have those 4 playing games, and then the winners are going to the Denver Coliseum if you're 6A, 5A, 4A. And
yeah, and I also the concept that you're talking about also lends itself to more on-site home games, which I think, as a general rule of thumb, is good for high school. When you get down to the Final Four, yes, it's great to have a big venue where people from all over can come, whether that's in the Springs or in Denver or up north. And so I think that there is something special about having your quote unquote state tournament in a big venue. But prior to that, having a regional tournament, if you will, at home sites, that could be a lot of fun.
Yeah. And you could even do it at shared sites in bigger facilities, but have, like, let's say you whittle it down, you play those regional tournaments over 3-4 days. But your regional championship games for region 1 through 4, and again, hypothetically, this is 6A, is being played at the Thunderdome at Manual. Or, and then your other regional championships are being played at Legend, and just things like that. I think that would make for a fantastic atmosphere. A little bit like I talked about with the league tournament, the Tri-Peaks District playoffs that were down at Pueblo Central. I think that would make for just an incredible atmosphere. So I'm really curious to see how this one's going to go. I think the language needs to be cleared up, because as it reads right now, it's postseason fields. And I think it should be state tournament fields should be reduced to that, because if you look at a sport like volleyball, which does really well with regionals, and baseball, which does really well with regionals, I don't think that postseason, I don't think the makeup of those postseasons necessarily need to be changed. There is a proposal for baseball that I'm genuinely excited about, which is going to turn the championship game into a best 2 out of 3 series. That is in the baseball committee report. So that's another one. I was actually texting Eagle Crest athletic director Vinny Orlando. He's the chair of the baseball committee. Told him that when I publish the Colorado Preps endorsements of what Legislative Council will be voting on next week, that's the committee report that I'm most excited to vote yes in favor of. Followed very quickly by golf, but that, they're trying to do good things for kids.
Sure. Well, and it's not meant to be a shameless plug, but for people that are interested in all of these issues, and this is just one of many, but you're going to be there on site. You're going to have opinions. I kind of liken you to 9 News when it comes to voting season. They kind of present both sides of things. They may weigh in. You're kind of that guy for high school legislative council. So yeah, for whether you're a coach or a parent or anybody who's interested in high school sports, I think your coverage of this stuff is going to be fantastic on coloradopreps.com when it's taking place.
Yep, that's always the goal, Doug. So with that, the only other thing I wanted to throw in before we get to our letter winners was I was sent this note over the weekend, but in Alabama, which when I looked was a state that in terms of population and number of member schools, very, very comparable to Colorado, state association has split private school, public school championships. They can still play each other in the regular season, but but private schools now have big private school championship, small private school championship, and then 1A through 6A for everyone else, which a lot of people have advocated for here. I'm not going to issue an opinion on what I think should be done, but I think it's a very interesting vote. They did have a multiplier on their private schools coming into this, and Alabama is a choice state. So not sure how that hits you at the last.
I didn't know that they
edition.
cared about anything in Alabama except for college football, so this is all news to me.
Well, I mean, we've talked about some of these issues from time to time, so I just thought it was an interesting
I've definitely looked at numbers and written articles about public versus private and how it shakes out in Colorado. The obvious answers are places like Texas where they have separate divisions, and they can because there's so many schools. You're saying Alabama and Colorado comparable in terms of the number of schools, the size of the schools, those kind of things. It will be interesting to see how it works out, because it's when you're a size of state like we are, and I don't know what their breakdown is when it comes to public and private. I vaguely know what our breakdown is when it comes to public and private, but I do know that there, at least from a gut feeling, it doesn't feel like there are enough like-sized private schools to fully compete against each other in, let's even call it 3 classifications, to crown state private school champions. Maybe they feel differently. Maybe public schools here feel differently. It does seem like they would be struggling to find games and struggling to figure out seeding if they had to play public schools throughout the regular season just to get games in. There's no perfect answer for this by any means. So I think watching how Alabama goes about it and the results once they have will definitely be something of interest, which obviously that'll take a couple years at least to kind of get a sense of whether it's working or not.
Right, and they're doing it for the start of their 2-year cycle, which also begins next fall. So with that, we're going to wrap things up. Go to our standouts, letter winners for the week. I'm starting with one of my home teams, Doug. Mike Reed, Manitou Springs boys basketball. We've called him Mikey for most of the season, but Friday night he graduated to Mike Reed. His team needed a spark. It was a close game at halftime, and he scored 16 of his game-high 22 in the third quarter in a win over James Irwin. And I think by himself he had an 8-0 run, a 6-0 run, 8-0 run in a span of about 25 seconds. So good on Mike Reed, and I think the next one's on you.
I think the Legislative Council may take a look at whether or not you are eligible for voting on shout-out letter winners from Manitou Springs. I don't know if that's going to pass or not. I'm going to go out to Fleming / Sedgwick County girls wrestling. Brooklyn Glendy went into Nebraska at the Eunice Hospitality Duels. Girls wrestling is just, I can't believe how big it is, and I also can't believe the quality of athletes that are participating in this sport in Colorado. But she went into Nebraska, a place that's known for its wrestling, and just rolled through the competition. That improves her overall record this season to 30-0, which, in case you're scoring at home, that's undefeated in a big-time way. So Brooklyn Glendy.
And she should be fun to watch here in just a few weeks at Ball Arena State Wrestling Tournament. I'll finish it off with Taylor Alcaraz from Fort Collins girls basketball. She leads the state with 52 made three-pointers on the year and is shooting an efficient 40% from behind the arc. The Lambkins sit at 10-5 on the season. And with that, a couple of things we want to promote. We continue to do great things across the entire Mile High Sports Network. That's going to continue with the Broncos despite their gut-wrenching loss in the AFC Championship game. Cody Rourke will have all the fallout this week. You can follow that on the Orange Crush podcast. Good morning, Broncos. Yeah, and then Troy Rank will also have great insight on the Denver Broncos podcast. Doug, the end of the Broncos season means you are a full-blown Nuggets guy. I know that to stay up to date for everything Nuggets, you continue to track Ryan Blackburn on his coverage on MileHighSports.com and at Pickaxe and Roll right here on the Mile High Sports YouTube page. Colleen Flynn and the Hockey Mountain High guys have you covered for everything Avalanche. And in a few short weeks, The Rockies begin spring training under a new direction with Walker Monfort, and that puts our guy Drew Kreisman back in the regular fold. And then the path to winter state championships can be followed right here on the Colorado Prep Show and over at coloradopreps.com. And with that, Dougie, I think we just get through the week going and cheering on the kids, cheering on the Nuggets, cheering on the Avs.
Can we just talk about the fact that the Broncos are playing in a driving snowstorm outdoors while the Nuggets indoor game is canceled because of weather? Now, think about that for a minute.
I can't remember. You would have a better memory of this. 20 years ago, were the Nuggets getting postponed because of weather?
The night that Allen Iverson was supposed to become a Nugget was postponed because of weather. That was here in Denver.
See, I thought his flight was postponed. I thought they played in that game.
Well, you might be right. It may have been two separate games. There have been postponements for Nuggets games because of weather. That was the one that stuck out to me. And it could have been AI just couldn't get into town, so his Nuggets tenure was delayed. But there have been Nuggets closures. I'm sure that Nick O'Hare, the media guru over at the Nuggets, could tell you exactly how many. But there have been. I just think it's ironic. It's indoors in a football game with 78,000 freezing people. Play on, man, play on.
I feel like Vic Lombardi should be telling us all that we're soft for an indoor sport getting canceled because of weather.
Last I heard, the Nuggets were sitting on the plane trying to leave, and they couldn't because of wing defrosting and all kinds of things like that. Like when we got on the air, the Nuggets were literally sitting on the tarmac just doing nothing.
Man, that's it's almost like we need someone, maybe our friend Chris Bianchi at Channel 9, to tell us 3 days in advance what's going to happen with the weather.
We'll effort that.
We'll effort that. So for Doug Ottewill, big thanks to Mark Jones from Doherty High School. For Danny Bailey, everyone else, this has been the Colorado Prep Show presented by Upswing. We'll be back next week as we inch closer and closer to Winter State Championships.